James Gunn announced today the first slate of the new DCU, which is replacing the old DCEU. And it's Chapter 1, which is called Gods and Monsters. It's going to be going over every single thing that was announced, breaking it down, and is closing pretty much how we're getting to this whole new franchise, universe, whatever you want to call it. So I'm looking at a Variety article. It's in the description down below. It's in the first link in the description. If you want to see where I'm getting all these quotes, I won't be showing anything on screen related to the article. You can read it all there. I'm not going to spend time editing this video because I'm tired and I don't really have time for it. So, just, you can hear me. That's pretty much all this video is. But I'm breaking everything down and yeah, so. Now, James Gunn said today that Shazam 2 and The Flash will be the last two films before this whole reboot. The Flash would be the main cause of the reboot. So let's just assume there's a flashpoint in this movie, which I think we're all assuming anyways. But it's pretty much just furthers the point that the Flash film will have a flashpoint that will reboot the entire DCU now. And it will kick off with Blue Beetle and Aquaman 2 featuring in the first two films following The Flash, but it'll still be part of DCEU. And then the first film in the DCU, which is when James Gunn starts all his stuff, will be Superman Legacy. Now, this film is not released until 2025, specifically July 11th, 2025, but that can always change. I mean, it's 2 years away. I would not be surprised at all if that date even changed to maybe 2024, depending if they even cast a Superman, because who the hell knows anymore. Although apparently, according to James Gunn, Henry Cavill was never cast as Superman. Now, I didn't really care for Henry as Superman, but even I admit he was cast as Superman for a while there. So, but there were 5 movies. I already said one of them. And there were 5 TV shows that James Gunn announced. I'm going to be going over the description of all these right now. The first we're going to be talking about Superman Legacy, like I brought up. Released on July 11th, 2025. This movie will mark the start of the DCU, as Saffron put it, but it will not be an origin story of the Man of Steel. It focuses on Superman balancing his Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing. He is the embodiment of truth, justice, and the American way. By the way, that quote right there pretty much ripped right out of Supergirl, the CW show. They said that several times in the show. I don't know if Superman specifically said that line himself, but I know Supergirl said it several times. So I don't know if they're going to try to make an ode to Supergirl in this movie or something, but the second I read that quote, I was like, okay, it's ripped out of Supergirl. Maybe Superman did say it, but, it's going to be something. Anyways, he has kindness in a world that thinks of kindness as old-fashioned. James Gunn is writing the project, and Saffron said he hopes Gunn can be persuaded, perhaps to direct it as well. Warner Bros. Discovery CEO David Zaslav made no secret that rebooting Superman was a top priority for the company, as he spent much of 2022 searching for the right leaders for DC Studios. So it's a little surprising that Gunn and Saffron are turning to the most recognizable superhero in the world to lead the charge in the new DCU, which it honestly is a little bit surprising because it's supposed to be a whole reboot. To me, I was expecting The Flash to be the first film of that, but I preferred it? No. But that's what I was considering it when we were told this would be a new whole slate. I wasn't expecting it to be a whole legit new Superman movie. I mean, what's next? Justice League movie? To be announced in Chapter 1. Now, Chapter 1 will be consistent of 8 to 10 years across video games, which is the number one thing that interests me in this entire thing. TV shows, movies, animated shows, but those are all very interesting, especially the video games one, which I'll talk about later on, but yeah, it's very interesting. The next movie, The Authority. From global fame to relative obscurity, Superman Legacy will lead directly into the Authority, an ensemble movie about superhumans who have a less than idealistic approach to saving the world. So basically, like, imagine Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman went rogue. That's what this movie's basically setting up. It's an evil Justice League, but at the same time, not really Justice League. It's, you know, they're an evil group of people. Sums it up. And James Gunn said that the Authority is a project he's really passionate about. It's a passion project of his. The characters come from Wildstorm, which was launched in 1992 as an independent entity under current DC Comics chief Jim Lee, and ultimately made an imprint on DC. Goes on to say more about the Authority in the comics and all that. The next one is heavily interesting to me. The Brave and the Bold, which is a movie following the Batman, not Robert Pattinson or Ben Affleck. Which, speaking of the Batman for a minute here, Robert Pattinson's universe, aka Matt Reeves' universe, the Batman will be in Elseworlds, DC's Elseworlds, which is a whole nother word for, it's in a whole different universe, different Earths, nothing to do with DCU. Personally, I am okay with that, because what this still leaves open, if they really wanted to, they can do their own Crisis on Earths, where we have Robinson's Batman being involved with DCU stories, with Superman and Lois, and the Arrowverse heroes if they really want to, which I doubt it, but they could, or the Joker, that whole franchise is in DC Elseworlds, but not part of the Batman universe. And also we know now that the Batman will be released on October 25th, 2025. Again, date could be changed, who knows. But another thing to be looking at here is that the title for the Batman sequel is The Batman Part 2. Now, I can go on another whole video talking about my theories about that and what that means, but it could mean a whole nother thing to, you know, if you really think about it, Part 2, we do know that the sequel will be a continuance of the first movie, but it also introduced a ton more that we didn't get in the first film. We've known that for the past few months. So, but anyways, going back to The Brave and the Bold, again, Ben Affleck, Robert Pattinson not reprising their roles in this film. This is a new DCU Batman, but the interesting thing is that Damian Wayne will be starring this film alongside the Batman, and I keep saying the Batman. If I say the Batman, I mean DCU Batman for right now. I'm not talking about Robert Pattinson's Batman. I will make clear if it's Robert Pattinson's. The Dark Knight and Damian Wayne are going to be two main leads in this movie, The Brave and the Bold, and it will be the introduction of the Bat family for the DCU, and the first among them is Robin. Now, he's doing Damian Wayne because James Gunn loves Damian Wayne, he's his favorite Robin. To me, why not do Nightwing, or Jason, or Tim? Damian is the fourth or fifth Robin, depending on how you look at it. Is he really saying that Damian's going to be the first? I mean, he even says here that Batman didn't know Damian for 8 or 10 years. So for 8 to 10 years, Bruce has been Batman, give or take 10, probably way longer than 10, and he hasn't had a Robin? There's no Nightwing? Is that what he's setting up? Because I'm not okay with that. I would prefer the Bat... Now, I could be looking at this wrong. He could still be thinking of Batman where there's a Nightwing and there's an older Robin like Tim, and Barb was there as either Oracle or Batgirl. But if you're going to set up a Bat family, the timeline's going to be all screwed up because you have basically a Superman beginning story, not an origins, but pretty damn close to it. And you're going to jump to Batman where he's been Batman for a few decades, and he's just now meeting his son. I don't see how that's going to work for the timeline of the DCU. It's going to be more screwed up than the DCU was. But that's me looking at it now. It could change. I don't know. But I am really interested in this movie. It's very interesting. Going to another thing I'm actually interested about through this whole thing. Supergirl movie, a solo movie, which I think is about damn time she got one. Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, which is, if you have any idea what this possibly, there are two things it could be resembling to. which James Gunn referenced, which is a Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow comics, where Kara, and it says right here, we see the difference between Superman, who was sent to Earth and raised by loving parents from the time he's an infant, versus Kara, who was raised on a rock ship off of Krypton and watched everyone around her die and be killed in terrible ways for the first 14 years of her life. Gunn called the Supergirl much more hardcore, though King's series also involves Krypto, the Superdog. Now, there was a report saying that James Gunn might make a game that would be canon to the DCEU and Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow based off Krypto, which is, the last thing I really want. I've always wanted a Superman game, not a Superdog game, but yep. But I will admit that this movie does sound very, 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 very interesting because they're taking a whole new take on Supergirl, right? The one we got with Mr. Benoist was Krypton exploded and she got sent away to Earth and she got lost in Phantom Zone for God knows how many years. Ended up on Earth, Clark was already Superman, and, she became Supergirl, Clark's overpowered cousin. It's going to be a different story, where Superman's still on this world, but Kara is much more darker. And she's much more, I don't know if I can really say brutal, because I don't actually know. I have to read the comics to find that out, and I probably will at one point before the movie comes out, which again, we don't know when. But it does sound like this Kara will be really more dark compared to Melissa's Kara. Now, we don't know who the actress will be. Sasha Calle, who is playing Kara Danvers, Supergirl, or at least we're assuming Kara Danvers, but Supergirl in the Flash film, which I still can't believe is still happening, by the way. We don't know if she's going to be in this movie or not. I would be a little bit surprised if she was, because this does not seem like her Supergirl would fit. To me. I think they're going to try to hire a new Supergirl, which they can easily do with whatever the hell is going to happen at the end of the Flash film to set up a reboot. They could just say that Supergirl's story is different than the Flash film, which does suck, because I think Sasha Calle would be amazing as Supergirl. I mean, she's really passionate about it. So, I don't know. It's going to be a whole thing of, could they keep her, could they not? Will they do something different with her in the DCU or not? Depends how she does in the Flash film. Which, speaking of which, James Gunn said it's the, quote, best superhero movie of all time. So, I don't buy that for a second. But, I don't know what movies he's been watching, but I don't think the Flash film will ever top Infinity War or Endgame or, I don't know, a few other movies. So saying it's the best superhero movie of all time, I don't think that's accurate. But what do I know? So then we come to the final movie announced for the first slate of DCU, which is Swamp Thing. It'll be a horrifying and just, this a horror film, which is amazing. I think it is needed because Swamp Thing is a big part of, the Justice League, and it's a really cool character that has never really been done well. I think they can do well with this. If they do it right, it can be done really well. It'll be the origin story of Swamp Thing, too. So, again, I think it'll be a really good setup for a possible Legion of Doom, or Injustice League, or Justice League versus Legion of Doom, maybe in the second chapter of DCU. I think it'd be a very cool setup. And also, they could make Swamp Thing be out an anti-hero if they really want to. I don't know. But they could do 20 different things with that. Now we're going to television, which is where the big stuff comes in. This isn't really one of them either. Creature Commandos, which is so random. It was the first announcement he made, and I was like, what the hell? This animated series for HBO Max is the very first project greenlit by Safran and Gunn, who has written every episode of the series. The show is already in production. The Creature Commando characters were first launched in 1980. The premise features Frankenstein's monster teaming up with a werewolf, vampire, and a Gorgon to fight Nazis in World War II. it doesn't appear that Gunn's version takes quite the same approach. Weasel, one of the characters from Gunn's 2021 film, is one of the commandos along with Rick Flag's father, Rick Flag Sr. Animation, Gunn said, allows their creative collaborators to tell stories that are gigantic, but without spending, $50 million an episode. Crucially, Gunn said that the actors... Now, this is the part that caught me off guard, and it's the part that's actually getting me really excited for this kind of stuff. The actors who voice the characters will play them in live action and vice versa, for games, for animated shows, for movies, for TV shows. If you... Let's say I played The Flash in live action... I'll have to voice him in video games and animated shows or whatever. That is an amazing thing to do because it doesn't... When we had the video game about the Batman from the Dark Knight or Keaton's Batman, it was the same premise, but it was a completely different voice actor. And it didn't feel as real. This way, when we get a game, like, let's say there's a Flash game for, like, first time in forever, I highly doubt it'll happen, but if there is, and it's canon to the DCU, and let's say Ezra does voice it, if he doesn't get fired, which I'd be a little bit surprised if he does, frankly, at this point, because James Gunn said he doesn't really care. He's going to keep him on if he wants to come back, which, of course, Ezra probably will, because that's who he is, but... It's a very interesting take to hire someone to play a role in live action and then have them voice the character as well. It just adds so much more longevity to the characters that we're being introduced to compared to if they're playing live action, we get a video game and we're like, okay, we're getting used to this new voice. That's not the one we're used to. It may not sound that important, but look at the Arkham games for a minute. And I'm going to bring up Kevin Conroy. I know, just... deal with it. Kevin Conroy has done 3 of the Arkham games. Arkham Asylum, City, Night, coming up on Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. When Arkham was announced, we all assumed that Kevin Conroy would be voicing Batman in that game, but it's a completely different voice actor. But the thing is that game is still canon to the Arkhamverse, whether we want to admit it or not. It is. But it was so weird because it was a completely new voice. Now we don't have to worry about that happening with the DCU. It'll be the same voice, same people, same actors, same heroes, same characters, nothing different. There won't be anything new brought to a character. There won't be anything taken out. It'll be the people who know these characters better than anyone else, which are the actors themselves, and they will deliver in the games and animated shows and vice versa for live action. The next show on the list is Waller, which season 2 of Peacemaker is on hold, which I didn't watch first season 1 of Peacemaker, at least a ton of it, so I don't really care for it, but it is a continuation of Peacemaker, and Gunn will be working on the show along with Crystal Henry, who was part of the DCU Writers' Room. Waller will be executive produced by Jeremy Carver, who created the beloved DC series Doom Patrol, which is ironic because that series was canceled by HBO Max a while ago. So, he goes from one DC show to another, so that's always something. The other one is the Lanterns. Now, there's some controversy here, because when I heard this, my number one reaction was the Greg Berlanti show. If you didn't know Greg Berlanti, who made all the Arrow shows, Superman and Lois, all these shows happen, he was working on Green Lantern show. It wasn't going to be part of the Arrowverse, and according to James Gunn, it was going to be a, quote, space opera, and they didn't like it, so they shelved it, and now Greg Berlanti does not have a Lantern show on HBO Max. Instead, what James Gunn and Saffron are doing is introducing a Lantern show that follows not only Hal Jordan, but also Jordan Stewart, which is beyond anything I was expecting. Or did I say Jordan Stewart? John Stewart. Sorry, not Jordan Stewart. Hal Jordan and John Stewart, both of them will be the main leads of the show, and it will be very much in the vein of True Detective, with 2 space cops on Earth just saving people, I guess. That's what they're going for. It sounds random. I think it depends how it goes. But Greg's show being shelved is very interesting because that's never happened before. Greg's ideas and shows have never really been shelved like this, where they're outright being said, it's not right, we're done. I will say that the idea of Superman Lois, Legends of Tomorrow, Batwoman, Naomi, Gotham Knights, all shows that Greg Berlanti had produced. I'm pretty sure Gotham Knights being produced by Greg Berlanti. Nonetheless, all those shows, they are pretty bad. And they are the weak point for, like, Batman Legends Tomorrow. Those two shows are the weak point of the Arrowverse at its core. And Naomi is just something else. Superman Lois is going downhill. Gotham Knights is already, like, a horror show on its own. But it's not really surprising that Greg is being shoved out of DC. I'm not surprised. It's suppressing to me because he made all these shows happen. I'm glad he did them when he had a chance. But I think it's about time that we get someone new. And it's been 10 years. Here we go, right? The next show, which is actually interesting to me in a lot of ways, which is called Paradise Lost, by the way. This Game of Thrones-ish story is set on the island of Themyscira before the birth of Diana, aka Wonder Woman. So it's a story that's based, again, before Wonder Woman's birth. Which is very interesting because I personally never know anything about Themyscira besides what's in the, I'm forgetting the movie, but it was Batman, Superman, and it was first introduction to Kara, and it was an animated movie. It was the first time I ever knew about Themyscira. And I loved that movie because of that aspect, because it introduced a whole new just era of DC, I felt like. And even though I didn't know at the time that was already a big part of Wonder Woman's life, but it would be so interesting to see this done, whether it's in animation or live action, because I don't think it actually says if it's in live action or animation or not. I don't think it does. But it's going to be about the political, behind the scenes of all of society of all women. It's going to be about the politics behind that. And it's going to be, I believe, really amazing. So I'm excited for that one. The next TV show which I'm also excited for is about Booster Gold. It's called Booster Gold, which allows the DCU to finally stretch into outright comedy. While he may not be familiar to casual fans of DC, the character, also known as Mike Carter, is a fan favorite among devoted readers. Saffron called Booster a loser from the future who uses basic future tech to come back to today and pretend to be a superhero. Nice job calling him a loser. And that was the last thing that we have to announce for Chapter 1. Another whole thing to be looking at here is that Zac Efron said that Gal Gadot, Ezra Miller, Jason Momoa, and Zachary Levi are all able to return to the characters if they so want to. Now, the next whole thing to be looking at here is Zachary Levi is currently under controversy as the stuff he said and had said on the podcast too. Ezra Miller is facing charges for stuff he did, and Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck are not mentioned here, and Henry Cavill will not continue as Superman. So, as much as I can see Gal Gadot, Jason Momoa, Zachary Levi, and Ezra Miller all coming back to play their roles in this new slate, I'd be a little bit surprised if they did. Especially Ezra Miller, when we're coming up to here. I'm not going to talk about the controversy, but I know that a lot of you in the DC fandom, whatever, including myself, want Ezra to be fired and the Flash to be recast. I have never cared about Ezra as the Flash, and for the I'm not going to support this film. I wasn't going to anyways, as much as I love the Flash. This film never interested me. Like, the CW show did, or like John's show did. It never did. But what did interest me was the fact that it's, Michael Keaton's in it, and we're getting new Supergirl. Ben Affleck will be in it, which we learned the other day. It's going to be a reboot, and I think it's going to be a good reboot. It's just the movie has to be good. And we're going to be too distracted by Ezra Miller's controversy to focus on that. So the smart move would have been to recast The Flash, fire Ezra and recast him. James Gunn isn't going to do that. So we're stuck with a movie that will flop hardball because everyone's too focused on Ezra Miller and that whole crap. And it's not gonna do well either way. It's really not. At least from my point of view. So it's gonna be a whole thing. And who the hell knows where you all go from here. I have made publicly clear that James Gunn taking over DC, I have not really cared for, nor do I support it. I don't think he really cares at all about what the fans actually want. But I do think his ideas can work on some things. The Batman DCU movie, The Brave and the Bold, the Superman Legacy film, as much as I hate the idea of Henry Cavill not being Superman in this universe, I don't support him as Superman, the idea that we're just scrapping everyone except Ezra kind of ticks me off, as I'm sure it does a lot of you. But I do think it can work. The Wonder Woman movie, or Paradise Lost show, not movie, I think can work. The Green Lantern show can work. The Booster Gold show can definitely work. The Waller show could be 50-50. It depends what happens. And relating to everything else that was announced in this slate, I mean, it's not all bad, but it's not all good either. There are some ifs, there are some maybes, and there are some what the hell is going on here. And it's really, truly going to be a whole thing of how it would all play out. So I hope it works out, but at the same time, I'm not holding out hope for anything good, besides the few things I said I believe are good. The Flash movie will probably flop. I mean, I think it's fair to say that it will. And they'll probably keep Ezra, and the DCU will then begin to flop itself because of that choice to keep Ezra on and to, not recast someone to be the Flash. That will always be something that will be hanging over James Gunn's head, and no one's going to let that go. I mean, people are letting it go right now. I mean, people are hating on it, which I agree with. Ezra Miller needs to be fired, and the Flash needs to be recast. Whereas with Grant, which I highly doubt it will be, but it would be amazing if it was, or someone else. I think that's the only way it can possibly ever work. So, yeah. Thanks for watching the video. Have a good day. Have a good night. Stay safe. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.